Okay, let's unpack this.
Hmm.
We are diving deep today into something really, well, baffling. It's one of the most painful human paradoxes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The mind's incredible ability to rationalize its own destruction. We're looking right at that mental state, that causes someone to repeat an action they know, intellectually, experientially, is going to cause immense harm.
And that's the absolute core challenge, I think, when you're dealing with any form of compulsive behavior, but especially addiction. It's that gap, the gap between what you intend to do and what you actually do.
Right.
Our sources, particularly those really foundational texts on recovery, they define this central struggle as the baffling belief, or sometimes they call it a delusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's this belief that despite years, maybe decades, of just overwhelming evidence that failure is basically guaranteed, somehow, this time.
This time it'll be different.
Exactly. This time, control can be regained.
It's such a paradox, isn't it? Why would an intelligent person, someone capable, repeatedly choose a path that leads to guaranteed negative stuff? Losing your job, relationships, health. Just because the mind insists, I can handle it this afternoon.
Yeah.
That first step of recovery, admitting powerlessness and unmanageability, it's essentially a brutal confrontation with exactly that specific kind of, insanity.
And that confrontation, it has to be total. It really does. The early texts are pretty blunt about it.
They don't mince words.
Not at all. They say that the delusion that we are like other people who can, safely use the substance, that idea has to be completely smashed.
Smashed. Strong word.
It is smashed before any real spiritual or practical progress can happen.
Yeah.
Because if you keep clinging to that idea, even for a second, that maybe you're the exception.
You're still trapped.
You're still trapped in that destructive cycle, yeah.
What's fascinating to me, and maybe often overlooked, is what's fueling this constant internal argument. It's not just like a thinking error, is it?
No, it's deeper than that. It's a profound disconnection. One of the sources we looked at describes it really well as this deep chasm between the inner life and the outer life.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, internally, most people hold core values, right? We want things like responsibility, creativity, love, honesty. These are deep-seated desires.
Sure, things we aspire to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the outer life, when it's driven by this compulsion, it starts to look very different.
Yeah.
It's characterized by fear, rigidity, maybe dishonesty, definitely distrust,
Yeah.
often just to protect the substance use itself.
You have to lie, you have to hide things.
Precisely. And this fundamental gap, this chasm between who you want to be inside and how you're behaving outside, it creates this deep, agonizing pain. Self-hatred even.
Yeah.
And of course, a desperate need for more escape.
Which just feeds the cycle again.
Reinforces the whole thing. It's a vicious loop.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to use these raw, really honest accounts and psychological insights from the material we've gathered to try and shine a light into that mental fog. We're going to dissect the mechanics, the psychology, the sheer, sometimes ingenuity required to keep that insane logic of the first drink going.
Yeah, the mental gymnastics are incredible.
Incredible. We want you, the listener, to understand the pattern so clearly that maybe that delusion starts to lose some of its power.
That's the goal.
Okay, so to really get a grip on the power of this self-deception, we need to look at specific examples, painful examples of failure. It's a very personalized kind of insanity, isn't it? Highly detailed.
It really is. Each person's rationalizations are tailored to their own life, their own fears.
Let's start with a classic story, an anecdote from the very early days of recovery. It involves one of the founders, Bill W., right, after he'd had some initial sobriety.
Yes, this is a perfect illustration. Just shows how quickly that rational mind gets bypassed. So Bill W. had managed a brief period of sobriety, which was huge for him at the time.
Right.
But one morning he wakes up and he's got this small, kind of uncomfortable hangover, maybe just fuzzy headachy. And the first thought isn't, oh, no, I need help or I should call someone. No, it's a rationalization.
Yeah.
Just aimed at mitigating the immediate discomfort.
Make it go away.
Yeah. The thought is something like, maybe just 1 or 2 drinks, just to smooth out the edges. Make watching the sunrise a bit more pleasant.
So the logic is framed entirely around comfort, minimal maintenance, like taking an aspirin.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And the deceit kicks in immediately. He takes the drinks. And then, according to his wife Lois's account, he immediately grabs the mouthwash.
To hide it.
To hide the action. Says nothing to her. And for a moment, he probably felt fine. Better, even.
A relief?
The relief. But of course, the hangover comes back,
Yeah.
maybe worse. And the rationalization instantly shifts. It goes from just easing discomfort to the classic doom strategy of tapering off.
Ah, the tapering fantasy.
The fantasy, yes. I'll just carefully reduce.
So what actually happened with this tapering plan? Did it work?
Well, the source material notes, Riley, that he tapered on instead of off.
Predictable, sadly.
Very. Lois later found him, as the book puts it, dead drunk.
Wow.
The critical takeaway here, and it's so important, is that once that chemical mechanism was triggered by that first rationally justified drink, the ability to choose an exit, to actually taper off or stop, was just annihilated.
Gone.
Gone. The logic chain, I'm just easing this hangover, gets immediately hijacked by the compulsion. It perfectly proves that foundational lack of control, powerlessness in action.
And this isn't unique to Bill W., obviously. This pattern, it repeats endlessly. We see it in people with incredible discipline in other areas of their life.
Absolutely. The sources share another story about a man who was highly capable professionally.
Correct.
He would work really intensely for, say, 3 or 4 weeks, no drinking at all during that time, saved money, was super productive, got praise at work.
Feeling good, feeling accomplished.
Exactly. Feeling like he'd earned a reward, like he deserved something for all that effort.
And the reward he chose was...
Invariably, he would reward himself with that first drink.
Oh, no.
And that reward instantly triggered the punishment. Every single time. It led right back to the same old miserable routine. Destitution, losing the job, despair.
So the achievement itself becomes the trigger.
It's a cruel psychological irony, isn't it? The very achievement of temporary sobriety becomes the justification for the act that completely destroys that sobriety. It's like the success plants the seed of its own destruction.
The self-deception required to keep that pattern going, it must be incredibly sophisticated. Let's dig into that a bit. There's this concept mentioned, the watchful drinker. What's that about?
The watchful drinker is someone who is acutely aware, often terrified, of the consequences of their drinking getting out of control.
Right, so they know there's a problem.
They know something is wrong.
Right.
So they compensate with hypervigilance. They become, as the text says, watchful and careful. They start counting drinks, setting really strict boundaries for themselves, absolutely determined never to get drunk again.
They think they can manage it with rules.
They believe their willpower, their intellectual discipline is the solution. If I just watch it closely enough.
But if they're still drinking at all, that watching, that vigilance, it must be exhausting, an immense drain.
It is. And the sources point out, crucially, that the watching fails. Every single time the substance is actually introduced. The vigilance might work before the first drink, but not after.
Ah.
They describe one woman, for example, who was deeply devoted to her small child. And that love, that responsibility, it held her back quite a bit, apparently.
A powerful motivator.
You'd think so. She was so afraid of slipping, so watchful, that if she was invited to a party where she knew there would only be 1 or 2 drinks served like a very controlled environment, she wouldn't have any drinks at all. 0.
She couldn't even risk 1 or 2 in a safe setting.
Exactly. That hypersensitivity, that constant need to manage the availability of alcohol, to calculate the risk minute by minute. It reveals something important. Her inner freedom was already gone, long before she even walked into that party. The powerlessness wasn't just about getting drunk. It was about the fact that her entire mental energy was consumed by not getting drunk.
Wow. So she was exchanging one obsession for another.
Precisely. The obsession with drinking was replaced by the obsession with managing the drinking, or avoiding it altogether through sheer exhaustion vigilance.
That's a really profound point, because it shows that powerlessness isn't just about what happens after you take the drink. It's the fact that your whole life, your whole mind, starts revolving around compensating for your inability to stop once you start. The planning, the avoiding, the calculating.
And that leads us right into another mechanism, the justification trap.
Okay.
This is where the drinker uses external pressures, real or perceived, to build this internal defense system for their drinking.
So blaming outside circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Blaming self-destructive episodes on things like a parent's illness, financial stress, a tough relationship, burnout at work, you name it.
And they use those pressures, those justifications, to aggressively defend their right to drink, don't they?
Aggressively is the right word. They construct this narrative. Look, I'm fundamentally okay. It's the circumstances that are unbearable. Therefore, I have to self-medicate. It's justified.
Anyone in my position would drink.
Precisely that. They tell themselves, often quite vigorously, quite defensively, that they'll stop all this,
Yeah.
At some point down the line.
When things get better.
When things get better, the problem is always externalized, which of course allows the destructive drinking to continue. Sometimes it even intensifies it because now it feels righteous, almost.
Yeah, like a necessary coping mechanism.
You read accounts of people, bringing wine home and placing it on the table with a kind of authority, almost daring anyone to question their justified need for escape, even while their family life is completely falling apart around them.
That's chilling. And then there's the aftermath, the blackout. That seems like the ultimate, undeniable proof of powerlessness, right?
You would think so. It's lost time, lost control. Undeniable.
But it's often followed by just intense denial.
Immediately. One memoir we looked at describes waking up from a blackout and feeling this terrible anxiety. Not guilt, interestingly, but sheer paralyzing terror.
Terror of what?
Terror of finding out. The immediate thought wasn't, what happened, how do I fix this? It was thinking of ways to annihilate oneself.
Yeah.
Rather than face those simple, terrifying questions. Where did I go? How did I get home? What did I do?
The drive is just to escape the accountability?
Purely. The thought process isn't recovery-focused, it's damage control. How do I bury the evidence? How do I prevent anyone finding out? How do I avoid having to answer for this?
So if evidence is found, like someone finds a bottle?
Instantaneously, the mind manufactures a complex lie. Oh, that was left over from that party weeks ago. I was using it for cooking. Anything but the truth.
And if the lie works, if someone accepts it, even for a moment?
It just emboldens the self-deception. It reinforces the idea that you can get away with it, and then it forces the creation of new, even more complex secret rituals to hide the drinking better next time.
Right. The hiding becomes a job in itself.
That's where truly immense energy goes. The sources detail these elaborate, almost Rube Goldberg-esque schemes of deceit.
Like what?
Driving miles out of the way to buy tiny amounts of alcohol at 5 different stores to avoid raising suspicion at any one place.
Wow.
Or this one desperate ritual described by an author. Visiting the grocery store, ostensibly for baby formula, using that as a cover.
Okay.
Only to detour, lock herself in a coffee shop bathroom stall with a small bottle of sparkling wine, drink it as fast as possible, dispose of the evidence, and then go home pretending everything's normal.
The amount of planning, the mental effort.
The resources, emotional, temporal, mental, all spent creating these elaborate structures of deceit. It's staggering. The entire life gets reorganized, bent out of shape, just to service the addiction while simultaneously concealing it. It's exhausting just reading about it.
It really is. This deep dive into the self-deception, the justifications, the hiding, it just brings us back, inevitably, doesn't it, to the only possible way out.
There's only one door.
Facing the evidence. Accepting the truth.
We have to. We just have to. And that leads us squarely, foundationally, to the requirement for any kind of lasting recovery. The first step.
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
That admission. The mind has to finally stop arguing with the mountain of evidence pointing to its own destruction. Has to surrender the argument.
And making that admission, it requires a pretty fundamental shift in perspective, doesn't it? Moving away from pride, from arguing, towards, well, honesty and humility.
Honesty and humility are key. And we need to be clear about humility here. It often gets confused with, like, self-abasement or weakness.
Right, like being a doormat.
Yeah, but that's not it at all. The sources define humility very simply. It's a true evaluation of conditions as they are.
Seeing things clearly.
Seeing things clearly. Accepting your current reality, your condition, without the distortion of ego or pride that keeps you separated from the truth. Humility is essential for any spiritual or psychological progress, because without it, you can't make that honest admission. The pride blocks it.
Okay, so let's break down the two parts of that admission. Step 1 has 2 clauses. First, powerlessness. What's the core realization there? What finally breaks that delusion of control?
The core realization is physiological, it's chemical, and it's absolute. It's accepting the unavoidable truth that's been established by decades of observation. Once a drunkard, always a drunkard, or a teetotaler.
No middle ground.
No exceptions found.
Yeah.
That's the stark reality. The individual has crossed some kind of line, a physiological boundary. The powerlessness is specifically about the loss of ability to reliably stop or control the drinking once the substance has been ingested. Regardless of your intentions, your willpower, how much you love your family, none of that matters once the switch is flipped.
And we can actually ground this in the science now, right? Linking it back to that neurochemistry we touched on earlier, the reward system.
Absolutely. We can see the mechanism. This is where that closed loop of anxiety driving the need for relief really comes into play.
Explain that again, briefly.
Sure. When alcohol enters the system, it triggers an artificial surge of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. Makes you feel pleasure, reward,
The initial buzz.
the initial buzz. But the brain is always seeking balance, homeostasis. So to counteract that artificial high, it releases unusually high levels of something called corticotropin-releasing factor, or CRF.
And CRF does what?
CRF is a hormone directly linked to stress and anxiety. It's part of the fight or flight system.
So, wait, the very thing you drink to reduce stress and anxiety
Alcohol.
triggers a massive chemical counterreaction in your brain that makes you feel more stressed and anxious when the alcohol wears off.
Precisely. It's a biological setup for a cycle. The brain is constantly left chasing relief from a state of distress that the substance itself created. That's powerlessness at a chemical level.
Yeah.
The brain's capacity to overvalue the addictive substance is hardwired into this dependent system.
That's huge.
And importantly, this underlying mechanism means that even someone who drinks moderately could potentially slide into dependence relatively quickly if they hit a period of major stress. A job loss, a death, a divorce.
The brain is sort of primed for it.
It's primed for that slide, yes. The pathway exists.
Okay, so if powerlessness is recognizing what happens after that first drink triggers the chemical reaction, then the second part of the step, unmanageability, that's about recognizing what the substance has done to your entire life, right? The whole fabric of it.
Exactly. Unmanageability details the consequences. The emotional, the moral, the practical collapse. Life stops being organized around meaningful things: work, family, purpose, growth. Instead, it revolves around, as one source puts it, going from one drink to planning the next drink.
Constant preoccupation.
Constant planning, preoccupation, hiding, managing. It means all those genuine pursuits we talked about, creativity, connection, personal growth, they just get abandoned. There's no room for them.
That state must create just tremendous internal suffering, emptiness.
It does. Intense feelings of emptiness, definitely. A lack of real accomplishment. And often, intensified self-hatred, especially during a relapse. You look back at the lost years, as one writer calls them, spent jumping through the hoops of this disease. The whole structure of your life has been hijacked by deceit and obsession. That is the very definition of unmanageable chaos.
But the genius of the first step, it seems, is that facing all this chaos, this powerlessness, this unmanageability, it leads to one incredibly simple, logically inescapable conclusion.
It's almost devastatingly simple, isn't it?
What is it?
If we do not take the first drink, we never get drunk.
That's it?
That's it. All the complexity, the rationalizations, the tapering plans, the blackouts, the lying, the wreckage, all of it stems from that one initial choice, the first drink.
So the focus has to shift entirely.
Entirely. It shifts away from the impossible task of trying to manage how much to drink or when to stop or how to control it, to concentrating only on avoiding one single drink.
The first one.
Just for today. Just for today. That becomes the foundational piece of practical day-to-day sobriety. It takes this seemingly overwhelming lifetime struggle and boils it down to a single, manageable daily decision. Don't take that first drink today.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked about the symptoms, the denial, the rationalizations, and the necessary admission of step one. But we need to go a bit deeper, don't we? What drives this dependence in the first place? Why do people keep ignoring that simple, logical conclusion about the first drink? Let's explore the root causes, that inner void you mentioned.
Right, because the drinking is often just a symptom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Many accounts describe alcohol acting as a kind of loneliness drug.
Loneliness drug. Interesting phrase.
Yeah. The core driver is often this profound sense of isolation, feeling lonely, feeling like you don't belong, feeling unaccepted deep down.
And alcohol seems to fix that.
It can feel like it does momentarily.
Yeah.
For someone who feels like an outsider, maybe socially anxious, alcohol can feel like. One writer called it a fresh powder of belonging that gets dusted over everything. It provides that false sense of connection or ease in social situations. It seems to bridge the gap.
It also sells the illusion of competence sometimes, doesn't it? We hear stories, especially about creative people, writers maybe, who genuinely believe they need alcohol to access their creative power. They wonder how anyone could possibly do complex tasks, construct a building, assemble a watch without it.
Which is absurd, of course.
Of course. Those things are done every single day by sober minds. But the addiction sells this lie, doesn't it? That the substance somehow makes us the people we want to be more confident, more creative, more connected.
Even as it's systematically dismantling every single facet of that person you want to be. It's the ultimate con job.
And that con job, that self-deception, is powerfully cemented by the neurochemistry we talked about, that dopamine surge.
It's incredibly compelling. The brain has these complex systems evolved over millennia that promote persistence. Persistence in critical things like finding food, finding a mate, caring for offspring, achieving goals.
Things needed for survival and thriving.
Exactly. These systems create intense fundamental drives.
Yeah.
But addiction takes that powerful drive system and focuses it entirely, obsessively, on the drug reward.
Yeah.
It hijacks the machinery.
So the very biological systems designed to ensure our survival and productivity are being repurposed.
Repurposed to serve the addiction. Yes.
Right.
And this behavior, because it's so powerfully reinforced, becomes overlearned. That's the term researchers use. It gets locked in as a priority structure in the brain, and it becomes extremely resistant to change, partly because the addiction actually lowers brain plasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and form new connections.
So the pathways get kind of cemented.
You could say that.
Yep.
The neural pathways favoring the addiction impulse get strengthened, while the parts of the brain responsible for exercising self-control, the prefrontal cortex, the part that allows us to say no to an impulse, what some call free won't, that part gets hobbled. It's a biological disadvantage.
Okay, given that deep biological rooting, that psychological entrenchment, we absolutely have to address the big cultural elephant in the room, the illusion of enjoyment.
Oh, this is critical, because culturally, alcohol is just universally presented as a panacea, isn't it?
Everywhere you look.
It's depicted as good times in a bottle, a simple remedy for pretty much every modern problem: stress, boredom, awkwardness, celebration.
The advertising alone is overwhelming. Billions spent selling the dream.
Exactly. But the actual experience, especially for someone deep in dependence, is vastly different from that promise. Radically different.
How so?
One source poses a really powerful question. If you stop and seriously ask yourself, did I truly enjoy most of my drinking? Or did I simply feel deprived, restless, irritable, and discontented without it?
Ah, that shifts the perspective entirely.
It really does. Was it actual pleasure? Or was it just the temporary cessation of withdrawal, or the temporary silencing of that anxiety the alcohol itself was causing via the CRF rebound?
So it's the difference between climbing a mountain and experiencing a real peak, and just stopping banging your head against the wall for a few minutes. The relief feels good, but it's not the same as genuine joy.
Precisely. For the person caught in the cycle, that illusion of enjoyment is barely noticeable anyway, because they're mostly operating in a deficit state, chemically and emotionally. They're just trying to get back to baseline, which alcohol falsely promises, but never delivers long term.
So realizing that, recognizing the enjoyment was largely a lie, that must be a profound shift.
It's described beautifully in one of the sources as being like putting on a new pair of glasses.
A new pair of glasses.
Suddenly, you see the world and alcohol's role in it through this brighter, clearer lens. You realize you weren't actually missing out on fun by not drinking. You were just constantly trying to avoid the self-inflicted pain caused by drinking. That's a game changer.
That realization about the self-inflicted pain, the need for a new perspective, it links directly to another powerful idea in the readings, that our thoughts fundamentally shape our reality, our material conditions.
Yes, this is where we move into the deeper psychological and, for many, spiritual dimension of recovery.
We have to replace those old destructive thought patterns.
We have to. The core idea, found in several wisdom traditions reflected in these texts, is that the radical alteration of our dominant thoughts literally transforms our material conditions over time. It's cause and effect.
How does that work in this context?
Well, if we allow what one text calls bestial thoughts, thoughts centered on escape, self-pity, resentment, instant gratification, sensuality, if we let those thoughts crystallize, take root, they solidify into habits of drunkenness, dishonesty, fear. And those habits over time solidify into circumstances of destitution, disease, broken relationships. Thoughts become things, essentially.
And the positive side of that coin.
Conversely, if we consciously practice pure and constructive thoughts focused on temperance, self-control, honesty, integrity, service, those thoughts also crystallize. They solidify into habits of self-discipline, courage, and responsibility.
And those habits lead to?
They solidify into circumstances of repose, peace, connection, and genuine lasting achievement. The willingness, the conscious effort to control the mind, to lift one's thoughts deliberately away from that destructive, addictive logic, is directly linked to creating a better future.
So the first step, admitting the insanity, is crucial because it forces that intellectual house cleaning. It clears the ground so you can start planting new, healthy thoughts.
Exactly. You have to see the old thinking for what it was, faulty, destructive,
Yeah.
before you can commit to cultivating a new way of thinking.
Okay. We've gone deep into the delusion, the mechanics, the root causes, and the absolute necessity of confronting it through step one. If the problem is fundamentally rooted in this mental delusion, and the admission is the foundation, then the path to sanity, the way out, must involve true surrender.
Yes. Surrender.
Now, that word surrender, it's so often misinterpreted, isn't it? People think it means weakness, giving up, resignation.
It's easily misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources frame it completely differently. They frame it as perhaps the most powerful, active step a person can take. It's paradoxical.
How is it active? How is it powerful?
Surrender, in this context, means relinquishing the illusion of control, letting go of the belief that you, through your own willpower, can conquer this thing or manage your life perfectly. And it's in that letting go, that relinquishment, that the door opens.
Opens to what?
To help, to spiritual growth, to renewal, to a different kind of power. It's not passive resignation at all. It's an active choice to stop fighting a battle you cannot win on your own terms. One source puts it beautifully. The only real power available to us is the power to carry out God's will, or a higher purpose, or constructive action, however you frame it. And that power only becomes accessible after we surrender our self-will.
That surrender really moves us into the territory of the third step, then turning our will and our lives over to the care of a higher power as we understand it.
It does. It's the natural progression.
And the sources give us a really helpful analogy, I think, to help you, the listener, understand what this act of surrender actually feels like in practice. It's the dancing partner analogy.
Ah, yes, that's a great one. Very practical image.
Explain it.
Imagine two partners on a dance floor. If both partners try to lead simultaneously, what happens?
Chaos, clumsiness, stepping on toes, confusion.
Exactly. Struggle, resistance, maybe bucking against each other. It doesn't flow. But when one partner consciously decides to follow, relaxes, trusts, and allows the other partner, let's call that partner the higher power, or the flow of recovery, or just positive spiritual direction, when they allow that partner to steer.
Then what?
Then the couple flows easily, gracefully across the dance floor. Trust and relaxation replace that struggle and competition. The fight ceases the moment you stop trying to lead the entire universe, basically. You let go, and things start to move correctly.
That's a great image. So this hard-won surrender, this willingness to follow instead of lead, what does it actually yield? What's the result? The sources talk about freedom.
Yes, but a specific kind of freedom. It's defined by what you are freed from, and then what you are newly free to do.
Okay, break that down. Freedom from what?
Freedom from the absolute slavery of alcohol, or whatever the compulsion is. Freedom from that relentless obsession we talked about. And freedom from the paralyzing fear of being found out, fear of consequences, fear of withdrawal. The fear that fueled all that obsessive management and vigilance.
Okay, that makes sense. And freedom to do what?
Freedom to choose sobriety, just for today. Freedom to be your authentic self, without the masks and the lies. Freedom to connect honestly with others. And, crucially, freedom to grow spiritually, to find purpose, to contribute. It replaces that old toxic freedom, which was really just licensed doing whatever I pleased without regard to others, with a constructive freedom, a freedom that allows for real fulfillment, for living according to your values again.
Practically speaking, though, how does someone apply this big idea, this profound surrender, moment to moment, day to day? How do they avoid slipping back into that old, familiar, destructive logic?
It really comes down to the constant, conscious, deliberate emphasis on taking it one day at a time.
The slogan.
It's much more than a slogan. It's a vital, life-saving mechanism. It's practical psychology. Because thinking about staying sober forever, that's overwhelming. Impossible, maybe.
How big?
Way too big. But this day, today, that's all we actually have. By focusing purely, intensely on remaining sober today just for these 24 hours, you bring a necessary measure of orderliness and simplicity back into what was likely a very chaotic life. It counters the chaos of the addiction.
And you don't do it alone.
Absolutely not. You rely on support, on tools, on maybe a higher power, on fellowship, whatever works to help you stay sober just for today. Tomorrow will take care of itself when it arrives.
That intense focus on just today, It must fundamentally change the person's internal relationship with the substance itself, right? It can't stay the alluring friend, the necessary evil.
It has to change,
Yeah.
and it does. It's often described as a profound, almost miraculous internal shift. Instead of seeing alcohol as your best friend, your reliable crush, your deserved reward,
Hmm.
the recovering person gradually, or sometimes suddenly, comes to see it for what it is.
Which,
A mortal enemy, a poison, something that reliably tried to destroy everything good in their life.
it's a complete reversal.
It's a 180-degree psychological shift. And when that happens, you start finding genuine pleasure and satisfaction in things like going out socially and not drinking. There's a sense of victory in it. Being able to, as one writer vividly put it, dance on the enemy's grave.
Dance on the enemy's grave. I like that.
Yeah. Knowing you consciously chose life, clarity, connection, instead of the delusion, the fog, the isolation, that internal, often unconscious desire for the substance has to be fully reversed. Drinking has to become a conscious, fact-based decision against something you now recognize as truly deadly to your well-being.
And that transformation, that journey through vulnerability, honesty, accepting help, that's ultimately what fills that great void, that loneliness you mentioned earlier that might have driven the drinking in the first place.
That's often how it works, yes. You find true connection, real acceptance, not in the false promise of the bottle, but in the fellowship of other people who understand. People who know the precise mechanics of your self-deception because they've lived it too.
That identification must be incredibly powerful.
It's absolutely key. Finding out you're not alone. That you're, as the texts say, brothers and sisters in our defects, but also in the common struggle and striving to overcome them. Hearing someone else articulate those terrifying feelings, those elaborate justifications you thought were unique to you, that's what breaks the isolation, widens your world, and makes that path forward, spiritually and psychologically, actually feel possible.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean? For you, the listener, who's explored these sources, this deep dive with us today, we've traced this journey, haven't we, from the absolutely insane logic of the first drink, fueled by neurochemical hijacking, and some seriously expert-level self-deception, through the necessary humility of admitting powerlessness and unmanageability in step one. And finally, landing in the freedom that's found in daily surrender and connection.
It's quite a path.
It is. And the core lesson seems to remain starkly simple, despite all the complexity we've discussed. The only real power available to us, ultimately, is the power to choose constructive actions, positive thoughts. And that power only truly unlocks when we make that radical, honest admission of our own weakness, our own powerlessness over the destructive force.
And that brings us to a really remarkable, kind of counterintuitive observation that's tucked away in the sources. It's about the very temperament of the person prone to alcoholism.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, think back over all the stories and mechanisms we discussed today. Think about the tremendous energy involved. Yeah. The stubbornness, the persistence, the intricate planning, the constant lying and covering up, the elaborate secret rituals, the sheer effort and ingenuity shown in obtaining the substance, managing the effects, hiding the problem.
Right. It takes a huge amount of focus and drive, actually. Misdirected, but still.
Exactly. It's an incredible amount of concentrated force. Willpower, even, just aimed squarely at the wrong target.
Okay.
So the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today is this. What if that person's initial temperament, that intense energy, that drive, that stubborn ingenuity they displayed in wrestling with the addiction, masking the problem, maintaining the illusion of control, what if that very same energy, that same intensity, is consciously and ethically redirected, turned towards a legitimate positive goal? A creative activity, a professional ambition, service to others?
What happens then?
The suggestion in the source material is that such an individual, having faced and overcome such a profound internal battle, is often more apt than not to go further, achieve more, than a competitor who never had to wrestle with that kind of intensity.
So the machine was incredibly powerful all along.
Incredibly powerful.
It was just aimed entirely at self-destruction once you re-aim it.
Once you re-aim it. That temperament, that ability to focus intensely, to persevere against obstacles which they clearly demonstrated in their addiction, is an incredibly potent force for either good or evil.
Wow.
So the question, the challenge for you, the learner listening today, is this. How can you, right now, begin to consciously turn the energy you might have once spent wrestling with self-deception, justifying failures, obsessing, or trying to control the uncontrollable? How can you turn that same powerful energy toward a productive, creative, or positive endeavor today?
That potential for transformation.
That ability to transform intense, concentrated energy. That's the hidden power. That's the gift, perhaps, that's revealed the very moment you fully accept the truth of the first step.
A truly compelling challenge to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.
We look forward to talking to you next time.